Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back. Thank y'all so much for joining us for another great video meetup today, sponsored by Scale Computing. Today, we're going to be talking about the latest evolution of hyperconverged infrastructure, which actually, believe it or not, can fit in your pocket, and that is not an exaggeration. We are going to be showing you that directly, as well as talking to a couple of folks that have already been able to implement this technology inside their organization. We've got a great panel of experts for y'all today, so without further ado, let's go ahead and kick things off with a round of introductions. Coming to us first, it has been far too long since I've been able to work with this gentleman representing Scale Computing. Please welcome Mr. Michael Lyons. Michael, how's it going today? Welcome.
Thanks, Justin. It's great to be here. Yeah, my name is Mike Lyon. I've done a lot of Spiceworks events, and this video meetup is going to be fun. We're here to have a conversation today and just talk about edge computing and the pocket-sized power of the HE150.
All right. Hey, Mike, your audio's coming back in and out. We'll check in with the other guests, and we're excited to have you on. But thanks for joining us today. Let's go next to one of our customer panelists. Please welcome Mr. Shane Rogers from Harrison Steel Castings. Shane, how's it going today? Welcome.
It's going great. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Shane, do you mind telling us a little about yourself and what y'all do at Harrison Steel?
Absolutely. My name's Shane Rogers. I'm the IT director for Harrison Steel Castings. I've been with the company for about 25 years now, almost right at that. Our company is a steel manufacturer. We make castings for the mining industry. We range anywhere from about 400 to about 25,000 pounds. We're in a little town in Indiana, but we're a fairly large facility. We're about 100 million square feet under roof, so our facility is quite large. We are one of the largest manufacturers of steel castings in the United States now.
Awesome. Well, we are excited to have you on, Shane. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. Our final panelist, last but not least, from Jerry's Foods, please welcome Mr. Jeff Miller. Jeff, how's it going today, man?
Hey, good. Thank you for having me. Am I sounding okay?
Yeah, you sound great, man. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and what y'all do at Jerry's Foods?
Sure thing. Jerry's Foods is part of Jerry's Enterprises. We have 5 different grocery banners under our umbrella, about 50 stores. We have liquor stores and hardware stores also, and just for fun, a cattle ranch out west. And we've been around about 70 years. I've been with the company around 25 years total, either as a consultant or full-time. And effectively, I'm the top of the department. We've known Scale for about 7-8 years now, and really are quite an advocate for the product. I think they do a great job, and I think this new edge piece has got a lot of application in our environment. That's for sure.
Awesome. All right, very cool. Well, thank y'all so much for joining us. Excited to kind of dig in and understand a little bit more about how y'all have been using this pocket-sized hyperconverged solution. But before we get into it, a couple of things I did want to cover. As always, if you have questions for our panel, make sure to get them into the Q&A widget down below. We'll be taking them later on in the show. Also, you should definitely check out the resources that Scale Computing has provided about the solution that we're going to be talking about today if you want to get a little bit more understanding about the capabilities of it and take it with you. No need to take notes because it's all right there for you. Wanted to give a special shout out to chat. See a lot of our favorite folks in there today, including Trent the Gent, Eric Wojo, B. Beckers. Hope y'all are having a great day today. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. Of course, if you do decide to participate in chat, please make sure to adhere to our community guidelines. We want to make sure that everybody is having as positive and professional of an experience as possible. And as a special thank you for hanging out with us today, one of y'all is going to be walking away with a JanSport Driver 8 rolling backpack. So we'll be giving that away at the end of the show. Please make sure to stick around until the end. We'll also be taking your questions at that point. Mike, let's go ahead and start off with you. Let's go ahead and take a look right now, if you don't mind, as to the server that we're actually going to be talking about today. Is it actually able to fit in your pocket?
Yes, it is. So I hope everyone can hear me. It really is about the size of an Apple TV. What we've really tried to do is create, a form factor and adapt our platform to run on an incredibly small footprint. And in spite of the size, you can pack anywhere between storage up to 6 processors, 64 gigs of memory. So a 3-node cluster.
Hey, Mike, we're still having a little trouble hearing you. Give us just 1 second. We're going to lower your throughput rate in just a second. All right, give us another shot. Yeah, give us another audio check whenever you're back. Try it now.
How about now?
Keep going. Tell us. Keep talking.
Yeah, so a 3-node HE150 cluster is going to provide fault tolerance, high availability, an elegantly simple power that you can really hold in your hand. And really, it's designed to be run on premises, and this is a pocket-sized on-premises private cloud.
Hey, Mike, we're still losing your audio, unfortunately. Let's go ahead and go over to Jeff to start out. Jeff, you kind of told us a little bit about what you guys do at Jerry's Foods. Obviously, I think we've all been grocery shopping before, probably within the last week or so. But obviously, I think a lot of us aren't really privy to everything that goes behind the scenes and to how folks are actually able to take their groceries home. Tell us a little bit more about how you guys have been using this solution and what problem you guys are using it to help solve.
So probably twofold problems that it solves. The most important is the fault tolerance. Most people don't know this, but there's quite a few processes in our within the store. Most importantly, payments that are real time dependent, and having the fault tolerance of these multi servers allows us not to have to lock our doors. To tell you the truth, prior to something like this, if we had a server or a systems meltdown, we would literally have to close the doors until we could get it fixed. And I think actually probably some of your people out there that are listening to this may have experienced this over the last 3 or 4 years. There have been some outages in the grocery systems. We all kind of share systems. The Kroger, Jerry's, Target, our other banners, Cub Foods, County Market, Ralph's, all the stuff across the country. We kind of share some common platforms, and if we don't have connectivity all the time, it's you're out of business and you have to shut the door. So that's the primary piece that we've solved for. But the other piece, we have a lot of little systems, and we always had a lot of individual little servers to deal with them. Your loyalty system, your gas rewards, if you get that, coupons, et cetera, et cetera. All of these have traditionally been their own spot system, and with this system, we're able to collapse all of those things into one fault-tolerant device that's literally just, a little bigger than a portable speaker, a portable Bluetooth speaker, and can sit almost anywhere with very little cooling or power requirements.
Mm-hmm. And had you guys tried like other solutions, like whether it's a non-hyperconverged server at each store, or kind of what specific to hyperconverged solution made this an attractive solution for you?
So prior to this, in some of our more important stores where we could spend $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, we put in your traditional VM architecture. It's expensive. It's upgrade intensive because of the Intel, Windows, VMware. I don't want to call them cabal, but they are. And so very expensive to run, but also complicated. It's gotten really complicated. We just need fault tolerance, something simple that someone can run, and something that a store manager can go over and actually literally, if they had to, they could just pull the plug it back in, and 9 times out of 10 will bring that node back online. If it doesn't, I can send them this in the mail. They'll have it tomorrow, and usually can walk them through getting connected. So all of those reasons, makes this a much more attractive solution, let alone the cost is much smaller. But I hate to say this, but I've been waiting for this my whole life.
That's great. And we talked about this a little bit beforehand, but so for you guys, was it actually kind of the cost that was the most important factor, or was the actual size of the solution also of importance to you guys?
Again, really, it was truly the redundancy, but again, redundancy at a cost. We couldn't put $60,000-$70,000 servers sets with VM and all that software in every one of our locations. I mean, some locations, that's all they make in a year, believe it or not. The grocery business is fairly small margins. It's all about volume. The more you have. So again, we couldn't put this everywhere. But we also needed the redundancy. And honestly, grocery stores have been out there a long time. Probably most people don't realize or remember, but it was only in the 90s that we got internet for credit card terminals. Prior to that, they were dial-up, right? And prior to 1970, there really weren't any computer terminals. So many of these stores were built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And literally, there's no data center. There's a closet. Used to be a mop closet. Sometimes it's still got water in it. Sometimes it's still being used as a mop closet. That's the data center.
Yeah. And I thought it was really interesting you brought up that you're able to just kind of mail these out to the stores. So, I mean, I'm assuming that, obviously you have to prep and, image them, so to speak. But then kind of beyond that, it's pretty much just, you don't even have to do that. What tell us a little bit more about that.
So the software comes pre-installed, basically. There is a tiny bit of config that has to happen in a Linux command line or Unix command line. Linux, it's a Linux-based derivative, the original software. I don't want to get too technical, but there's like 4 command lines you have to perform, and then you just hook it up. It sees the other 2 nodes that are still running your software, by the way, and hooks together, and now you're redundant. Again, back to the whole, one of the reasons I like these guys, they just made it simple. Their product development, and I'm getting his title wrong, but one of the founders who was instrumental in architecting some of the solution, one of the things he said to me one day was, I don't like to work nights and weekends. So I make sure our software is so robust that I don't get those calls. And I always thought it was very fun.
I think it's said that the laziest people are the best innovators, right? I mean, I feel like that's easy. Not that the founders of Scale are lazy, but I'm just saying that's oftentimes where the best innovation comes from. Mike, let's try to go back to you, man. Let's see if your sound's coming in a little bit better. But going back to what you were saying, tell us a little bit more about this device that we're talking about today.
Well, kind of to pack on to what Jeff was talking about, the data center is everywhere now. It's in broom closets. It's in the rafters. It's tucked into where in different buildings. So it's really changed the landscape of what the data center looks like and what it is defined as. And having a small form factor and size really makes a difference. And I think Shay can talk about this as well, as far as recreating the data center anywhere you need to. Again, providing high availability, uptime, continuity in something that's incredibly easy to manage.
Hey, Mike, we're still losing your audio. I understand we've got Dusty Kokenberg, also from Scale, ready to tag you in. Hey, man, Dusty, how's it going, man?
All right, I'll come in and
I
can come in in replacements. Cool, awesome. So now this is good to pull me in quickly too. I think I've spent a lot of time with Jeff, and I've spent a lot of time with Shane. Shane was kind of saying that he's located in a small town in Indiana. Lo and behold, when I met Shane at a trade show, it's in Attica, Indiana, which is where I grew up. So randomly, he's literally like 3 blocks from my parents' house. So that's awesome. That's an interesting play there. But so thanks for pulling me in here with Mikey's issues. Just to cover the hardware real quick, that Mikey I think was kind of explaining up front. You're looking at such a small device, but he was talking about packing in The technology, you're running i7, processing, you're looking at, up to 4 terabytes, NVMe, all sorts of different networking capabilities. So, not only is it the small form factor, we're really packing a punch with this thing. It's not just your consumer based. I'm sure most people have seen that. That's a NUC. And so, we're using this for real world application uses. And it's great to have Shane and Jeff on here, because Shane and Jeff are longtime customers of Scale Computing's HC3 hyperconverged solution. They've been running it at their data centers. They've been running their entire companies on this for years. And as they followed along with us, they've now seen that Scale Computing is entering into edge computing. And we're one of the few HCI vendors that's able to take that complete HCI platform and take it down as opposed to going up. With the development of the software and the resources that it takes to run our HCI, for high availability and redundancy and everything, we're able to take it down to these really, really small form factors. So, Justin, I'm going to continue to let you talk to the customers, because I think that's where the cool use case stuff is. And Shane and Jeff, great to see you guys, and I'll stay on here for additional questions. So,
cool. All right. Yeah, let's talk to Shane next. So kind of the same questions that I was asking to Jeff, tell us a little bit more about how you guys are using, this solution, and I think in particular what it meant to the problems that you were looking to solve.
Right. Well, let's talk about problem first. I mean, data from machines, from just about everything. We have data coming all over the place. Our facility, I mentioned, was very large. We can't really network everything. It's not possible. Not in a factory form anyway. So we had a problem. We were running around with SneakerNet nonstop, right, to grab data from machines, to look at that data and try to analyze that data. So we had people just dedicated to running around with USB drives, grabbing data, getting them off the machines, putting them back in, and taking and analyze that data. So with these, we came up with an idea. We ran a proof of concept, or did one proof of concept. We're in their second proof of concept now from another location. But we've taken these and putting these in a little teeny box in the middle of our shop floor, and then wiring our machine tools to these little boxes. So all this data now is coming into these to the Scale boxes, and we're grabbing that data. We're able to collect it in one central location and then ship it back to SQL servers or other servers that are needed at night. The reason we did that was because we wanted to eliminate the network traffic. Could I wire all those things? I probably could run fiber to everything. Cost there becomes astronomical, but it wasn't something we wanted to do. We didn't want to put all that data on our network. PLCs, if you work in the machine language, they do nothing but talk. I mean, we have a couple machines that are sending out data snippets, every microsecond. So you're getting one piece of data every microsecond. So that adds up pretty quick when you're shoving that across the network. So now we're collecting it at the edge, and then we're taking that data back across at night or at certain time intervals that are lower for the network.
And Shane, tell us about, in terms of the form factor, how did that relate to the space that you guys are working in the where it's being utilized, and how much of a factor is that?
Well, I wish I had pictures. I have taken some of the pictures. We have them out there in our facility, but I mean, we don't have a lot of space. I mean, fork truck drivers that are running around. I mean, it's just, there's not a lot of, we don't have a closet. I mean, it's shop floor. There is no closet. So you have to kind of get, come up with ideas. So we just came up with a simple little box sitting on a pole in the middle of our facility. And, 3 of these stacked up in that box with a little switch right there. I mean, that's all it takes.
Now, Jeff, I want to go back to you. I mentioned obviously that uptime is critical, and I think like any infrastructure, it's not just staying up, but it's everything in terms of like updates and making sure that the patches are being applied and all that kind of stuff. And I think Dusty had mentioned that you guys had previous experience with the larger HC3 appliance as well. Did you find that experience translated to the solution that we're talking about today, the HE150?
Absolutely. The software is literally no different. It has all the same features, functionality. The only thing you're working with is the smaller disk space. They are confined to, at the moment, 4 terabytes of flash. That's going to expand over time here, as we all know that, technology gets bigger, better, faster in a smaller form factor. So I anticipate that'll be more. But like I said, most of these applications that we had, I mean, they were running on on machines so old. Some of them they still had like 10 meg MML drives. MMF? I can't even remember. It was MMF or MML. I can't remember, and I might be mixing those up. But they're tiny little spaces, so we didn't need a lot of space, and we're still able to do our duplication of the servers if we need to. Then put a patch on it, make sure it's working, and then put it into production and that kind of thing, even in that small 4 terabyte of space. And really, it's 4 terabyte times. I never get this right. Dusty, maybe you'll correct me, but times the number of nodes divided by 2 or something like that. But so you really end up with, I don't know if it's 6 or 8 terabytes of usable space, but it works like any high availability thing, and there's no difference in the software. They put it in a smaller form factor that takes less power and generates significantly less heat.
Mm-hmm.
So
Shane, what about
like Shane did?
Shane, what about y'all? And I mean, in terms of updates and maintenance, what has stood out to you in terms of the overall experience using the HE150?
Simplicity. I think that's a simple one word. I mean, it's just easy. We have some future needs for availability out on the shop floor. I think once we start using these, high availability is going to be required because we're going to be making decisions off the data that we're getting. So we can't, we already know what we're going to be collecting, and we know we're collecting some very, very important data, OE data, things like that keep these machines up and running. So, the availability of having a cluster at the edge was, awesome. I mean, it's just amazing that we can actually do something like this today with these form factors. And working on, I mean, like we mentioned earlier that, if something breaks, I mean, it takes minutes to get it up and running again. I mean, if one goes down, you know instantly because you're getting an email right away, and then you'll know then you can get it up and running within a few minutes if you have a spares.
Dusty, let's go back to you. So we've heard a lot from Jeff and Shane about their specific use cases, but what else are you guys finding in terms of either most common issues that we're expecting this to solve, or other just kind of unique and interesting ways that people are utilizing the HE150?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously retail and industrial, industrial 4.0 is driving a huge piece of this. So other places that, we're seeing the use cases is in shipping and logistics. You have these massive container ships that are out to sea for months at a time. And, you think about a shipping container ship, it's large, so you don't need this very small device necessarily. But that's the beauty of this software being exactly the same across our entire family. So, on a ship, if they need to run kind of the HE500 series where it's a half depth, rack, they could put that in the main hull of the ship. And then as they go out through the ship and they have other applications that need to run on site in the ship, they could deploy these smaller HE150 devices and they can talk back to each other. We're working with very creative networking, uplink connections to Starlink and things like that that these ships are doing. So, cutting edge stuff. Other use cases, obviously the IoT and the AI world is really driving this piece. Oftentimes people hear edge computing and that's where their mind goes to immediately. And it's always fun to talk about those things. We're seeing some of that in agri-science. These people are starting to put these things on tractors. They're starting to put them into their feeding barns and making sure that their animals are getting the right amount of food. Hydroponically grown plants, are they getting the right moisture, the right light? All of that's being ran by IoT devices and IoT technology now. And back to Shane's point, that is driving a massive amount of data. And not always does that data have to be processed right there, but the beauty is you can do it. But pushing it across your networks is where it gets extremely crazy to get it to where it needs to be processed. So if you can collect it there, wait until the evening, or when your system starts to slow down, you can push that back out across to the larger data center, back up to even the cloud in a hybrid cloud situation, and do your analysis there, and then start to make your intelligent decisions there. Now, when you do say edge, this bleeds into remote office, branch office. We have credit unions that are running this to where they only need file and print services out at some of their branch offices, or just the critical applications that keep their business running. But they have very sensitive data that they don't want to push to the cloud, with users, credit card numbers and things like that. They want to run that on premises, but they don't need an extreme amount of compute and everything else. So lots and lots of use cases across industries, and I think we're just now seeing it. Pardon the pun, but we're just seeing the edge of what this is gonna be. So
I think there's going to be a lot of edge and scale jokes, I think, in the next.
We may have set that up for a reason. But.
Dusty, is this something, this small form factor hyperconvergence, is this something that the other HCI vendors are also looking at, and y'all were just first to market? What's your sense of how this technology is developing for the industry overall?
Yeah, it's we've had some very good conversations, and most of the folks on here know my CEO, Jeff Reedy. We're looking at the way that compute has gone over the last 20, 40 years. It comes in 20-year waves, and we feel that the next 20 years is all going to be around edge computing. It's kind of, in a way, bringing the mainframe back, but putting the mainframe in a really small package and putting it out on premises and doing it out there. So I think all HCI vendors are probably looking at this. I think, where some of them potentially are struggling is the resources of the hardware that it requires to do it. So we are first to market with this small device, and, really, really looking forward to the future with it.
All right, cool. I'm hoping we can get Mike back in. I have a couple questions for him. Hey, Mike, if this doesn't work, we're going to pause your webcam, and hopefully that will allow your audio to continue. But I was hoping if you could kind of talk a little bit about whether you guys see this as really just kind of a point solution to solve an immediate need, or as the foundation for growth, and how does that actually, pun intended, scale up as folks start to outgrow this specific form factor?
Yeah, so obviously we want to be able to take advantage of the ability to scale out. As these smaller environments outgrow their initial deployment, it's designed to just be able to add another node. And when you get to a point where maybe you need to transition to a larger form factor, that's just a matter of using our replication to move those VMs over. So if your journey starts small, it's very easy for us to scale that up.
Cool.
And Justin, if I could step in there too, one of the other things that we're also developing is a complete monitoring system for these applications. So, we're looking at zero-touch deployment, the ease of monitoring tens, hundreds, even thousands of sites inside of one UI. So there's a lot of work also being done in a product that is going to be edge focused, that's going to allow you to monitor and manage all of these devices that are going to be out in the wild.
Cool. All right, Dusty, my next question for you, it's the one that no other vendor really seems to want to answer, but can you talk to us about pricing? How much can you actually expect to pay for this type of solution if this is what we're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the initial price that, we're going to start with is going to be around $5,000 for this HE150 deployment. And again, that's always going to include your first year of support. That's all software licensing. There's no additional VMware licensing that sits on top of that or anything like that. So.
All right, very cool. All right. Well, we've got quite a few questions. I want to go ahead and get started into them. This first one comes from Berto007. What would you say to someone looking to move from VMware to Scale? What questions should I be asking our Scale vendors? I would actually like to get Shane and Jeff's response on those. Shane, would you like to go first? What are your thoughts?
Well, I've never been a VMware shop, but I was another one of those vendors out there, and I would say that moving over, super easy. I mean, I moved over from our other vendor to Scale within, I don't know, a couple of days. I had everything up running on our Scale systems. It didn't take any work at all. And if I was looking now, I would never go the other direction. I would just go straight to Scale for almost everything, if not everything.
Um, Jeff, what are your thoughts? Had you previously used a different virtualization vendor, or were you Scale from the start?
No, we were so. I was a long time VMware client, well before EMC bought them and all the rest of it. I mean, when it was like two guys in the garage, I was out at Schwann's Foods putting the system in. It was the very first system, like on this side of the Mississippi or something like that. I don't remember what the whole thing was, but it's a long time VMware customer. I was skeptical, I'd have to say, in our first deployment, but we haven't had any issue whatsoever. And we did transition quite a few VMware systems and servers over to this, and I can't think of any issue that we had, period. I know many other people had much more complex VMware systems, so I would assume there would be some issues. But one of the great things is Scale is right there with that first year support, and with processes to help you through whatever transition you're trying to do. So they've kind of planned that in advance, I would say.
Yeah, I like to add something there on that support. I mean, they were the key to making everything work perfectly. I mean, they were there to help you and walk you through if you have any problems at all. I had one minor issue on our first deployment, and I mean, they were within, setting up a support ticket within just a few minutes. I had a phone call and we were walking through it, and they had it fixed in no time. That's the best part. I mean, and for me, I mean, they're just a couple, not that far away from me as well. So.
They are local U.S. support, which is really and our retail outlets have a lot of foreign support, and sometimes the phone calls and everything aren't that great and everything because of connectivity. Just because of connectivity, it's not that the support isn't good. So having a U.S. based support, I think, has been a good thing, And I don't want to ask other support people, but
Shane and Jeff, I read this joke that was like, Linux is free if you don't put any value on your time. Is that accurate? Was that accurate to your experience, or did you guys find it was actually a much easier learning curve than you were expecting?
Oh, well, they hide that all behind their interface. I'll tell you the truth. I mean, there's very little Linux piece, and what we've actually done is instead of like running Windows servers on top of their architecture, we've actually been able to transition a bunch of our Windows servers before to Linux servers, and they're working really well within this architecture. There's one of those questions out there. I want to be the guy who answers it, Justin. It's about blockchain, and I'm highly involved and highly interested. So when you get to that one, I'd like to at least participate.
I'll plug you into that. Mike or Dusty, can you guys speak real quick to migrations? I think specifically from VMware, anything that folks should just be aware of. I mean, I know that's like an entire separate conversation, but for folks that are kind of curious about this, anything we want to share with them.
Yeah, I'll let Mike. We want to make that process as easy as possible. I mean, it's just a design. We actually OEM some software from Carbonite that can do more or less live migrations of all existing, whether it's physical, virtual, all of your existing workloads can be very easily migrated and transitioned over to Scale.
Cool. All right. Let's go next. NZ Mark C wants to know, can the system scale up non-disruptively? For example, the HE150 to the HE500. Mike, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but you want to kind of delve into this a little bit more?
Yeah, so there's one thing that's unique about the HE150s is that there's only a single drive in each node. So in a 3-node cluster, you have 3 drives, and that's how we're providing high availability. All of the other clusters we have and nodes have 4 or more drives. So you can't snap on an HE150 cluster to an existing, HE500 or larger, but it's very easy just to replicate the workloads over from, your HE150 cluster to a larger one.
All right. Let's go next. All right, let's go ahead and take this question. Jeff, question for you. Are any of your systems doing nodes for blockchain, not mining specifically?
So IBM and Lenovo together have a very big global project to use blockchain in chain of custody / chain of oh god, now the expression is or the term is slipping my mind, but it's basically so that if your bananas were grown in Peru and country of origin, so all your country of origin and your which has become more and more important in the food industry. So all of that tracking, they see a very, very big opportunity to be able to use blockchain. So literally, you'd be able to go home, look at or scan a code on your steak, and find out exactly what cow that came from, right? And so I'm trying to work with them, utilizing these smaller scale nodes, to do a pilot project for our ranch to utilize these in that whole chain of custody piece. Because right now, it's an extremely manual process. It has all kinds of paper, to tell you the truth, which then gets entered into computers, and there's all kinds of room for error there, where we could literally compute this right away at the barn, like Dusty was talking about with the feed monitoring, things like that. We would have something to monitor the feed, monitor the cow. You'd be literally scan. We do hand scan our cows now, to tell you the truth, and but we're trying to put it all together and then enter it into the public blockchain that IBM is putting together for the food industry. So it's totally applicable. It's going to happen, and it's going to be cool. You will be able to go to a public blockchain database somewhere and look up and find out where your stuff came from.
I mean, that I'm sure would be great for like recall and like.
Absolutely, but there's a fair amount of people that want to know. There's a fair amount of our customers in the grocery store that literally are like, I want to know everything about this product. And I think it's become more and more important it's definitely become more and more important to our customers in the last few years. And I'm not quite that shopper, but the younger folks, the millennials and such, they really want to know the origin.
You can say it. We got it. We know what you're talking about.
Sorry. Anyway.
No worries. Cool. Let's get another question. This one's from High Tech Hick, which is a great name, by the way. Is Scale actively working with backup providers to offer agentless backup options? We're pretty big fans of Unitrends, and they support our VMware and Nutanix data centers very well. Dusty, or Mike, I guess, and you guys want to kind of speak to the backup capabilities, particularly with third-party agentless providers.
Yep. So
yeah, I can take that as well.
Yeah. Mike, I can just update.
Yeah,
I'll just update. Right. We just recently announced the partnership with Acronis, that they have built in the agentless piece to that. We've been partnered with Acronis for a couple of years now. That is our main backup alliance vendor that we're working with right now. Agentless is available, as well as many, many other features that Acronis brings along with that. But I'm going to kick it to Mikey, with him being the technical guy, and let him answer a little more on top of that. So.
Yeah, so really it started with us creating and exposing our change block tracking API. Acronis has just really kind of been the first one through the wall to develop an agentless product and put some cybersecurity features in there as well. But yeah, as time goes on, now that we have that change block tracking API, we're hoping to get other vendors involved for agentless backup.
Cool. All right, let's get a question. Another one from NZ Mark C. Can the nodes be separated across the sites for, like, example, a factory where all 3 nodes are not susceptible to a single point accident, like forklift crash, for example? So, Shane, I wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, are you concerned about forklift crashes, or how much of the physical redundancy did you plan around for?
Well, we didn't actually plan around for physical redundancy. We were playing around for multiple clusters at the edge. So we didn't decide to put in, could that be done? Absolutely. I could see it easily being created. I could put a couple nodes in one section of the plant, another node in the other one, as long as your networking is set up for that. I mean, as long as you got a good layer 3 running and have everything capable to do it. But yeah, fork truck crashes are quite common. It's something to be worried about all the time. Make sure you put them on a nice heavy pole or up a little higher than the forks can hit. So,
yeah, and Justin, I think that question lends itself to something interesting with what Shane is doing as well. So, when you hear edge computing or you hear robo distributed enterprise, you generally think multiple locations in physically different places. What Shane is doing is actually deploying edge computing under one roof. His plant is, I hope I get this right, I think it's 800,000 square feet, maybe a little bit bigger than that. So it's cool that he's creating edge computing just inside of his buildings. And so again, the use cases that we have available to us are just going to be kind of mind blowing, to tell you the truth. So,
cool. Let's get a question from T Roberts 2. Can you use the pocket-size units as a remote cluster to a larger full-size cluster? We have both a normal cluster and a single node DR as well. Can we use the pocket size as a secondary, quote, hot cluster? I don't know.
You could very easily use the HE150 as a third, tertiary DR target. So yeah, there's nothing stopping you from managing them all together and just having 3 different clusters that can replicate to each other.
Size is the only issue, honestly, just the size of whatever it is. We have all of ours meshed together, all of our different clusters, the big ones, the small ones, and you just need to make sure that whatever you're replicating from one to the other or DRing from one to the other is appropriate sized. So we have that all put in place, and it's happened a number of times. So works really well.
Let's get a question from Brian in CA. What's going on, Brian? He asked, what kind of bandwidth do the edge devices require to connect back to the central location?
So as far as, just requiring replication or the replication bandwidth, I mean, at a minimum 1.5 to 5 megs, the amount of data that's going to be replicated is really going to depend on the change rate. So if you don't have a lot of change, you may not be pushing a lot across the data or across the network. Shane, I'd be interested to see at what point you were mentioning that you hit a network saturation point. How much data was being pushed across? What was that rate where it was this saturating your network versus we're saving the bandwidth putting it into HC3?
Well, we ran just a few tests to determine what we were running in some of those locations, just 100 meg or even 10 meg to those locations out in the deep areas of the foundry. So, it didn't take much to have a machine that would, have, say, 100 node pickups running, every node hitting every 3 seconds or every, 3 hits every second, would saturate 10 megs pretty quickly. So, those, you think about a machine, thousands of things are moving around on these machines at once, and you're trying to capture every little piece there is of that data. So the one area that we tried to hit and really look at deeply was a furnace. So a furnace has ramp up, ramp down times for temperatures, and we capture those temperatures. I think it's 100 times a second. So we can figure out exactly what that furnace is doing. So, and there is 25 probes, I think. I may be wrong on that, but I think it's 25 probes on that furnace. So, start multiplying that out, and you'll quickly realize that if you do that on one furnace, okay, you do that on 8 furnaces, and well, now we got a problem. Well, what about if we add in another 20? So it adds up fast. This solves everything that goes. I mean, I don't have to worry about any of that now. So
awesome. Let's get another question. Dusty, we'll have you take this one. NZ Marks, he wants to know, can the Edge run containers? Are you aware of anyone either exploring using containers on the HE150, or is that something that's on y'all's radar? You're muted.
That may be a question better suited for Mikey. I definitely know that we have people that are interested in it, and I believe that we do have people that have been able to do the containers. So
we have people running containers inside of VMs. As a part of what Dusty was talking about earlier, thinking about managing dozens to hundreds of thousands of sites, we're starting to put in some automation into that product. So that's actually container driven, and that's on our roadmap. So we expect to see that in the next year. But you can absolutely just install Docker on a VM and run containers natively inside HC3. We have many customers doing that.
Cool. All right, and let's take one final question from Native Texan. What's going on, Native? Can the USB ports be used, or are they disabled?
They're disabled. The only thing they're used for is for the initial keyboard mouse configuration.
All right, good to know.
There's on our roadmap. So the NUCs do have the Intel's. They've got a Thunderbolt port, and they also have a single internet port or a single NIC. So right now we do all of our network tunneling, and then the VM replication across the backplane. So they're just VLAN on one connection. We're going to be exposing the Thunderbolt ports to provide network redundancy, really to provide a second layer of network interconnectivity without having to deal with an Ethernet switch.
And I'd like to make one note. We actually do use the USB ports on our units. I think they had to come in and do some custom coding. But we have, believe it or not, a software key that has to sit local. Yes, there still is software keys. Or keys. It's like ridiculous, right? But anyway, so we had to have Scale help us activate one of those ports.
Right.
So it's
for things like that, if you do have dongle-based management, that can be enabled. But in general, like as far as using it as an I/O port to plug in a USB drive, that would not be supported. Thanks for pointing that out. That's a good point.
Cool. All right, y'all. We're coming to the end of the show, so I wanted to give you all one last opportunity to share any final words of wisdom or advice with our audience. Let's start with Dusty. Dusty, anything from you? Any final takeaways for our audience today?
Yeah, my biggest thing is we're talking Edge. Edge is the future, but Edge is being delivered right now. We have customers that are doing Edge, and don't think that you don't have a use case for it. Come and talk to us. You may think that it's not going to work, but we are more than happy to have those conversations, dive in, and take a look at how we can make this work. You have critical applications that run your business that are legacy. Those can sit on top of this stuff, and we can be the bridge to the digital transformation into IoT and AI that you're looking for. So,
all right, Mike, anything from you? Anything that you think that our audience should walk away with?
I mean, just we don't have any cut and dry list of use cases for these. Our customers are coming to us. You guys are coming up with the ideas and seeing, opportunities and places where these can exist. So I would just say, think outside the data center would be my suggestion as you start to evaluate edge computing in these HE150s.
Cool. All right. Let's go to Shane. For anyone else that might be watching that might be considering using the HE350, HE150, or just any other solution from Scale in general, anything that you feel like they should know?
From the edge, IoT, I mean, your imagination is limitless. I mean, you can really come up with almost all kinds of use case for these things when you start thinking about it at the edge. I mean, what we thought was everything had to go to the data center. It's not the case anymore. It doesn't have to all go to the data center. Maybe it eventually will, but processing out there saves time, saves money. You just have to think about it and make it happen.
All right. And lastly, Jeff, any final words of wisdom for you for anyone else who might be considering utilizing this?
I guess I'd like to tag on to what Shane was talking about. Really, it's you walk around your facility or your business or whatever it is, and if you do think outside of the box about things that you probably have brought back and had processed in a SQL environment or a data center environment, sometimes you realize they don't need to come back. I actually don't need to know that data because I'm just shoving it back out to, in our case, the customers, right? We do an application that when you buy a certain type of dog food, it spits out a coupon for another dog food. I don't care, honestly. I don't need that back in my data center. You just need it in your hands. So, again, like he said, there's just so many applications. We're really going to see this explode with the IoT, talking refrigerators and stuff like that. I mean, in the long run, your convenience store is going to have 3 of these explaining to you why you love this coffee.
All right. Well, on that note, I want to thank all y'all. This was a fun show. I hope you guys had a good time as like I did. But big thank you to Shane and Jeff and to Mike, as well as to Dusty, who was really hoping to not be on this event, but we packed him in the last minute anyways. So thank you for
always prepared.
hanging out with us. It is now time to announce the winner of our prize, and the winner of that rolling backpack is going to go to Nicholas3356. Congratulations, Nicholas. Please send a private message to David S. in the community. Let him know you would like that backpack shipped. Big thank you again also to Scale Computing for sponsoring today's event. Hope we get a chance to work together again real soon. If you like today's show, please make sure to check out all the other stuff that we've got coming up by clicking on that orange widget or by sticking around until after the presentation ends. But until next time, y'all, please stay safe and keep it spicy. We'll see y'all back here. So long, everybody.